Okay, we've talked a lot about Israel lately, and as is often the case, following the Hamas attack on Israeli civilians, there has been a shift in U.S. public perception on Israel. But interestingly, following this recent polling from October 16th to October 19th, CBS News shows America is not actually that pro-Israel. Should U.S. send weapons/supplies to Israel by party? Should and should not, with like pretty median responses across the board. You'll see Dems lean very slightly towards should not. Independents actually lean more strongly towards should not. And Republicans lean somewhat moderately towards should. This is actually huge. The perceived unwavering American support for Israel and sending weapons to Israel and the like has always kind of been taken for granted. What's interesting is, as Delaniak says right here very wisely up here in the top right, this means that the squad, Rashida Tlaib, Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, whatever, are actually more representative of the average Democrat than like 95% of the Democrats that are in the House of Representatives. Like 95% of the Dems that have been elected are like hardcore, super pro-Israel. We will fund every Iron Dome missile, $1 trillion to Israel. And then if you take a look at what Americans actually, want, especially Democrats, the squad's ambivalent answer towards sending more aid, and they're like, we should call for a ceasefire, that's more representative of the voter base. Isn't that interesting? The fact that even 43% of Republicans are saying we should not, I think that there are probably like different explanations for this. A big part of it is that an increasing proportion, Vosh, this is not entirely accurate. America just doesn't support sending arms to Israel, but support for aid is strong. Support for aid will always be higher, but what we actually give Israel is weapons. The vast majority of the monetary support that we provide to Israel is funding for the Iron Dome and is like essentially vouchers to buy U.S. weapons. That's where our support comes from overwhelmingly. If it's just sending aid, then like most Americans will say we should send aid to like any ally under any circumstance, This is very, very meaningful. A lot of this is probably because people are getting younger, and younger people just seem to be less pro-Israel in general. A lot of it is also, that's right, nativism and isolationism. An increasing proportion of mostly Republican and independent voters, I'm willing to believe, are just flatly not people are getting younger. The younger generations are increasingly represented in these polling results. Thank you. People are not getting younger. We actually get older as time goes on, unfortunately. Was the American public a lot more pro-Israel 10, 15, 20 years ago? Yes. Yes, they were. We can actually see right here, net sympathy for Israel in the Middle East situation by party ID, where the sympathy from Republicans went up after 9/11, but since then has stayed more or less the same. Whereas over here on the side of Democrats, it's actually fallen to a net lack of support, or with more support towards Palestinians. So it went all the way from 34 points in favor, hovering around there, and then something around the election of Donald Trump clicked in the head of Democrats, and their support has just fallen since. Can't see the bottom left corner? I can help you with that. Clink. See that? All the way down to -11. That's significant. Even the independents have seen a downward shift lately. Again, hovering more or less in between red and blue for a while, and lately, where'd he go? Here we go. We're back. We're back. Who's talking? Where'd he go? Must have been the wind. The drop in religion might be a factor as well. That's true. Yeah, there's less religiosity in young people. Should the U.S. send humanitarian aid to Palestinians in Gaza? 70% of Democrats say yes to this. 59% of independents, even 41% of Republicans. Of Republicans! Those guys suck! This is a huge shift. The shift in perception here is massive. And what's crazy is these polls were taken after the Hamas attack on October 7th, meaning that you would expect the results of these polls to be skewed disproportionately towards pro-Israeli support. But that doesn't seem to have happened. Despite this being the worst attack Israel has suffered in ages, despite this being like a massive deal in terms of the Israel-Palestinian conflict, it hasn't represented itself in the form of this like post 9/11 era massive uptick in support. And I think that's great. Unfortunately, a large part of the Republican and independent support dwindling can probably be attributed to the aforementioned nativism and isolationism, and probably a large part of it also being just plain old anti-Semitism. Anti-Semitism has always been a problem in American politics, more so on the right than the left, but I'm willing to bet that with the ramp up in, the culture war discourse, I'm willing to bet there's a decent number of Republicans who think that Israel secretly controls the U.S. So, not a lot, not a crazy amount, but, not none. Netanyahu's pretty much responsible for everything, TBH. It does help that Netanyahu is extremely unlikable. He probably does drag down perception of Israel quite a bit. If it was just isolationism, I don't think there'd be so many Republicans and independents also supporting aid to Palestine. That's true, yes. This graph means that the shift cannot be entirely attributed to isolationism. It also has to be, at least on some level, genuine support for the Palestinian people. I would rephrase that. I think people do have an overwhelming empathy for Israeli people, but understand their government doesn't speak for all their people. Yeah, of course, yeah, but that's always the case. As we see over here, like it's net sympathy for Israel, sending aid to Israel, and then it's humanitarian aid to Palestinians. Again, really important to distinguish, Israel is a government. It's a state. The Palestinians don't have one. Hamas is not a government in the way that Israel is a government. Palestinians are people who live in Israel. They're just like third, fourth class citizens. So the way the language gets framed is going to shift between them because I remember reading Hamas was elected. Yeah, it was like an extremely sussy election nearly 20 years ago, back in 2006, and there has been no such election since. It was held during an incredibly politically convoluted time with Israel pulling out of Gaza and maintaining their occupation externally with the fence. And either way, Hamas does not have the power of a government. They don't have any autonomous power. No government can exist if another opposing government can shut down their water services from outside. Netanyahu is not the only one responsible for this. Vosh, you're wrong. They're not citizens of the state. They're in a very special status, and the country doesn't claim ownership of their land, which is bullshit. Yeah, that's a legal falsehood. That is using law to lie. Gaza is not a state. It does not have the power. It does not have the monopoly over violence of a state. It does not have the same rules or authority over itself as a state. The territory that is Gaza, in every functional sense, is controlled by the Israeli government. They clearly show no issue with exerting control over it in the form of depriving them of power, of fuel, of denying them trade. This is like the same thing with Taiwan legally being recognized as a part of China, but in reality, in every functional sense, it is not. It's like Dressrosa. Thank you. It's like Dressrosa. Thank you. Everyone, can we all clap for Spyro Gal? This reminds me of when the One World government used Luffy's home island as a trash dump. I mean, it's good that people are not as dogmatically supportive Israel that they used to be. Do you think these stats mean we're getting closer to an actual solution in the future? No. No, I don't think that. I don't think that. Unfortunately, I don't think that. Adolf Hitler, a.k.a. Tav Herzlich, with the 30 shekels, says, "Hey, not cool. I'm doing a lot of things, including convincing fellow Israelis that we're actually hurting Palestinians and that this is a complex situation. Plus, I'm being bombed, which is not pleasant." You're not the only people who are being bombed. I'm sorry, there's really no morally getting around you saying, who cares how many innocents we kill? You might think the circumstances concerning the Palestinian people are unfortunate, and they are, and you're correct in that respect. But I'll put it this way. I don't think it's actually a complex situation. I just think that Israel is doing evil shit with no equivocation, I don't like that it's a complex situation. If you are trying to convince fellow Israelis you should lay up on the Palestinians, you should be nicer to them, whatever, that's good. But I'm sorry, the statement, who cares how many of them we kill, is just an evil statement. And you don't get to morally paint over that because you think you're targeting Hamas, because Hamas, okay, let me put it this way. Hamas also thinks that. When Hamas kills a bunch of innocent civilians, they are also killing IDF members. The IDF members are objectively complicit in the ethnic cleansing of the Palestinian people, right? And to a large extent, the settlers are as well, though they're not military targets. Like, if you're saying it doesn't matter how many innocents we kill, as long as we get at the people who are hurting us, they could use that logic to sweep across the entire state. You know that, right? Like, that logic applied to them, they have significantly more justification because Israel's done far more harm to Gaza than Gaza has to Israel. So that's one. And for two, that would carry them to all the way to the border. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that specific numbers of fatality are not an interesting metric. No, you directly said, like, well, that's what they get for having terrorists that are for having civilians that are being used as human shields by terrorists. Your exact language was, who cares about numbers? 10-7 actions are so much worse than choosing to bomb terrorists that use civilians as human shields. So you can't. So now you're being disingenuous because you're saying they're not an interesting metric, but you said so much worse. It's not so much worse. Israel has objectively killed more people now than Hamas did in 10-7. Israel has always killed more people than Hamas. Israel was killing and displacing Palestinians decades before Hamas even existed. Hamas existed when was Hamas created? In the 80s? When was Hamas created? The Nakba was in like 46, or when was it? 48? 40 something? Yeah, so 40 years before Hamas, the genocide began. But again, if you're convincing Israelis to lay up on the Palestinian people and be nicer and such, then that's good. I don't wish harm to any Israeli people. Fine, you're right. What I said does imply this. I take it back. What we're doing to them is horrible, but it really is different in an important way as Hamas just went after civilians. I'm very sorry, but like the IDF does absolutely go after it. The IDF literally like cut power and water to the entire. Hamas has water stored away. You think the average Palestinian does? The IDF goes after civilians just as much as Hamas does. The difference is that your media sensationalizes it differently. When Hamas kills 1,000 Israeli civilians, it's horrible, and it is, and it gets reported as horrible. But when Israel kills 1,000 or more Palestinian civilians, it's like, well, we had to. Did you have to? I mean, Hamas only exists because of Israel. They were created after decades of terror and ethnic displacement, and Netanyahu literally promoted their existence because having jihadists represent the Palestinian people made them easier targets than if they had secular representation. Like, you literally constructed the straw man to fire rockets against, right? You have built the situation. Israel has constructed every bit of this dynamic from the get-go with the power that we gave you with our weapons and with our support and with us constantly voting in your favor in the UN Security Council, all of the votes that we've done in your favor. I don't think you can equate the explicit Jew murdering intent of Hamas with the implicit Arab murdering intent of Israel. No, like I said, the difference there is that Hamas is more honest. Literally, dude, the IDF and Netanyahu's government are crawling, like, infused with Hitler particles. The idea that they're, like, accidentally doing ethnic cleansing is total bullshit. You can go find Hamas officials who will say more reasonable stuff if you want. Like, you can go find Hamas officials that will say, like, we want a ceasefire, you know, we don't want the destruction of all Jewish people, we just want to live together in peace. There are Hamas people who are promoting a ceasefire, who are asking for, like, an end to the conflict. But we know that Hamas is largely a genocidal organization, that the underlying bones of Hamas would go for it and do go for it, you know? So let's not pretend that's not the case with Israel and the IDF, because they're doing it more successfully than Hamas ever could. How far has Hamas come to a genocide? They've killed thousands, to be sure, and that's horrible. What has Israel done? Look at what Israel's done. The Nakba, enclosing them into this open-air concentration camp, killed many thousands more people. I think that they're pursuing a genocide much more openly than Hamas is, and much more effectively as well. If Hamas was far stronger, then it would be a different situation. But they're not. Vosh using whataboutism. Nothing that I've done here is whataboutism at all, like even remotely. An unfortunate contradiction I hold is that despite Israel helping foment Hamas, Hamas has to go, and I know that it will cause civilian casualties and pain. Do you have a different take? Have we learned nothing from the war on terror? What happens in our intervention in Iraq? What happens? ISIS. If you want Hamas gone, then give Palestinians a diplomatic way out. Give them land, give them money, give them food, give them shelter. Show them that there is value in a diplomatic engagement with Israel. Because for the past 70 years, Israel has made it very clear there is no point in negotiating with them. Israel is violating international law and its territory grabs, constantly lying and breaking rules and bombing and killing journalists and killing leaders. Why would any Palestinian ever believe in a diplomatic solution? The reason Hamas exists is because Palestinian people feel hopeless. They feel that they have no hope except through violence. And Israel has given them no hope. Israel has taken all of that hope. So what Israel needs to do is give them hope, give them land, give them money. And Israel has the land and Israel has the money. And I know that because they took the land and they take our money. So you have the shit you need to give them. Yeah, Israel fails to adhere to international laws that they've agreed to. Like, it's Jesus, you know? There's so many better directions here. If you want Hamas gone, give the Palestinian people a reason to believe in any solution other than Hamas, because they've been given no reason to believe that anything will work. And when people think that nothing will work and their deaths are inevitable and there's no hope, people join ISIS, people join Hamas, people join the Taliban, people join Al-Qaeda, people join Hezbollah, people join the Mujahideen. That's what happens. When people are hopeless, well, when Muslims are hopeless, at least they'll join Islamic jihad groups. When Christians are hopeless, they'll shoot up schools. I don't know. Every ethnic and religious group has their own particular way of doing hopeless, crazy shit. You know, fucking. So yeah, you know, it's an ethnic flavor. Okay, it's. You can either die of starvation, random bombing, infected wounds, or you can die fighting back. Literally, like that's what Israel has given Palestinians. They live wretched lives of nothing with deprivation. The only time they see any material wealth is when they go up to the border fence and they watch IDF soldiers on the other side in clean clothes with modern military equipment. They can look out through the fence and see all of the amenities of the modern Western economy as they sit trapped there in a ghetto, kept in these conditions by Israeli officials who promise and then lie. And then they see their family and their loved ones die to bombings, to deprivation, to preventable medical causes. And you tell these people, like, hey, you're going to die at 35 anyway, bucko. Would you rather die with a gun in hand, or would you rather die like wretched and nothing in the street? Oh, and by the way, you're very religious, because poor, uneducated people tend to be very religious. No shit, they supported Hamas back in 2006. But if you want to get rid of them, bombing them only re-engages in the conditions that created them. They have to be given hope. By the way, an Israeli minister has said that hostages and civilian casualties will be secondary to destroying Hamas yesterday. Israel wants to continue this. Of course they do. Netanyahu is literally pro-Hamas in the capacity that Hamas is the hopelessness of the Palestinian people. To the extent that the existence of Hamas allows Israel to engage in the behavior they engage in. Can't that logic be used to excuse Trump supporters? No, we're not talking about excusing anything, and there's no comparison at all. Trump supporters aren't in Gaza. They're not in an open-air concentration camp yet. We'll get there. No comparison. If what you mean by that is, are all people just products of their socioeconomic circumstances? The answer to that is yes. All people are simply products of their socioeconomic circumstances. And if you want to change the way things are, you have to address those underlying circumstances. And it's that simple. You know, no matter how bad they are or are perceived to be or whatever else, it is that simple. The pro-Palestinian position is like a global consensus. Yes, there is a big effort to refuse to engage with anything Israel is or does from like a socioeconomic perspective. It's all like hyper essentialized bullshit. Yeah. Do you think the Hamas should be treated like the IRA during the Troubles? In the sense that the IRA was a terrorist group, but the underlying things that the terrorist group was angry about are like worthy of political consideration? Yeah. I don't think there were that many IRA people who... No, actually, hold on. There were definitely some IRA people who were like, yeah, f*** them, we'll just get every Brit off the northern part of the aisle. There were definitely IRA people who killed innocents and were like, yeah, we will literally just purge the entire northern part of the island. Yeah, Biden. Joe Biden, when he was there, that was his opinion on the matter. Joe Biden. Do you denounce the IRA? Are you asking me to denounce the legacy of my president? Never. Okay, you know how lately I've been making comparisons between Israel and Russia? There's a reason why I do this. You know, the liberal West has been pretty much entirely mobilized ideologically against Russia. You know, we've had multiple years of nonstop anti-Russian propaganda as a consequence of their invasion of Ukraine. Justified propaganda, by the way. You know, propaganda isn't necessarily untrue, it's just politically motivated. And boy, are we politically motivated to dislike Russia. The thing is, despite there being many, many, many similarities, not the least of which being that Netanyahu and Putin kind of get along. A lot of liberals don't extend the same disfavor over to Israel. So I wanted to talk about two cool, super cool little bits of information. So, from the Spectator Index, as of very early this morning, Netanyahu's government approves regulations that allow temporary shutdown of foreign news channels on grounds of national security, as communications minister seeks to shut down Al Jazeera's bureau. So Al Jazeera is not the most pro-Israeli outlet, but the idea of like blocking foreign news channels while you're committing a genocide so that your citizens can't see information critical of that behavior is insane. It's one thing with Ukraine. If Ukraine wants to say, hey, no like disinfo from the Kremlin, I think that if you're being invaded and your existence is being threatened, it's okay to block propaganda from the people who are trying to kill you. That makes sense to me. I get that. I think that's fine. That makes sense to me. However, when you're the one doing the killing, when you're the one doing the genociding, and then blocking out other, like, what threat is there to Israel here? Like, Hamas is going to suddenly win? Like, oh, Hamas is just baiting the IDF into overextending so that they can mount a counterattack in a pincer formation, you know? You may think that Israel completely surrounds Gaza, but in actuality, you know, the Hamas is forming a surround, you know, around the entire nation. It's genuinely insane. You know, Israel has LARPed as a liberal democracy for a long time, but as the cultural and social forces that tend to exacerbate fascism become more prominent, they will shed that LARP more and more aggressively. The idea of just flat out shutting down foreign news channels is insane, you know, like genuinely psychotic. And I also saw this wacky clip. You know, and if somebody, look, again, I can't understand, you know, here, every language, you know, there's any context in chat you want to supply, because this sounds pretty crazy to me.
אהלן וסהלן, מי שרוצה להזדהות עם עזה, מוזמן, אני אעלה אותו לאוטובוסים עכשיו שמפנים לשם.
So this sounds genuinely insane to me, and I want a fact check from the audience right now. I saw other sources reporting on this, but I want to know, can somebody find or correspond this? Because I remember seeing other people corresponding this, but I want to make sure. Essentially, it's a police representative saying, like, these anti-war protesters, we should just send them to Gaza. Now, obviously, he doesn't actually have the ability to do that. At least, I don't think he does. Okay, here's the Times of Israel. That's pretty reliable. Police chief says zero tolerance for pro-Hamas demonstrations in Israel, suggesting that those expressing solidarity with Gaza should go to the Strip instead. Okay, there we go. That sounds more likely to me. Yeah, there we go. Whoever wants to be a citizen of Israel, Ahalan Wasalan, Shabai says in a video posted on Tuesday to the Israel Police's Arabic TikTok channel using common Arabic slang meaning welcome. Anyone who wants to identify with Gaza is welcome. I'll put them on buses that will send them there. I'll help them get there. Oh, there we go. Okay, I think we can trust Times of Egypt's translation on this. So essentially, yeah, a police chief saying, yeah, if you're going to be supportive of Gaza, you should go there. We will put you there. Times of Israel, you mean? Yeah, Times of Israel. What did I say? Vush misspeak? What did I misspeak this time? Egypt? Why would I say Times of Egypt? Is Egypt even on the page? Where would I get that? Nope, your brain just did a thing. It's been known to happen. Adderall. Ameliorate. Came to me in a dream. Yeah. So the whole, if you want to be supportive of our enemy, we'll just ship you there thing isn't exactly like new. I mean, that was done after 9/11, where anyone who was saying maybe we shouldn't invade Afghanistan and Iraq, it was, you know, the immediate response from many people was like, oh yeah, well, so if you like jihadists so much, you should go live in Afghanistan. Like, that was a really common, yeah, they said that with the Vietnam War. It's just a very common, like, hawkish thing to do. You know, if you don't support our war, then you should go be victims of our war, which is not great. But I think it speaks to the way in which the mask of liberal democracy is falling off a little bit. You know, this statement on its own isn't that atypical, were it not for the fact that it was not just an errant comment, it was broadcasted proudly. You know what I mean? It wasn't just a politician letting a statement off. It's a police chief, and they posted it to their Arabic TikTok channel. It wasn't just like an offhanded thing or like some hawkish statement representative of the Hitlers present in this guy's brain. It was like the thing they wanted to promote. It was the statement they wanted an active threat out for. And between that and the just blocking of external media sources, you know, Al Jazeera being the one they cite initially, but like, let's be real, if you authorize the government to block foreign critical media, they're going to do it like a lot. That's the whole point. Every authoritarian overstep is done initially under the guise of responding to one specific threat. All the TSA shit, all the Homeland Security shit we have to deal with. Hell, the Patriot Act. It's always like, dude, bro, trust me. We need this authoritarianism in this specific instance to achieve this specific goal. And if you disagree, then why don't you go over there and live in Afghanistan? And then obviously the Patriot Act continues to exist now over 20 years later with no signs of either party shutting it down. So, yeah. It's Russia-like. And the only reason I say it's Russia-like here is because Russia is a fascist country, and I'm just saying it's fascist, you know. But people think of fascism as this really, like, abstract, kind of blurry, nebulous political term, which to an extent it is. All political terms are kind of abstract and nebulous to an extent. There's always variance in how they're defined and applied. Whereas Russia is a concrete, existing government. So you can point to that and everyone can see that and go, wow, that looks bad. It's just insane to me that there are so many liberals that will correctly criticize Russia and then just not identify anything happening in Israel in that way, in that context. Like not even a little bit. Like it all just gets buried under the dogma of Israel has the right to defend itself. You know? But yeah, it's not good. It's not good. It's not good. The Patriot Act sunsetted under Obama. Wait, didn't it? It didn't fully, did it? I thought there was like a specific provision of the Patriot Act that sunsetted, but the general program, is that true? Did we defeat it? I thought they renewed it. Sunset provisions. Extension was passed. Barack Obama signed the Patriot Sunset Extensions, which extended 3 provisions. The provision were modified to extend 2019, passed in 2015. In 2020, efforts to extend the provisions were not passed, and as such, the laws expired. Oh, so it expired under Trump. Thank you, Trump. You know, that Trump guy, I've always said, real freedom hero, real hero of America, real believer, freedom, America. Freedom. Yep. Mm-hmm. It was almost certainly replaced by another mechanism. Well, yeah, Patriot Act's just one thing. There's also like the PRISM thing. There's like a whole bunch of shit. Go watch John Oliver's interview with Snowden, I think. That's probably the best and most concise explanation of the stuff that was found through. It's not good. It's not good. Yeah. Thank you, Trump, as always. Vosh, the way you're saying to Israel is that's the wrong way to defend yourself reminds me of how Republicans always tell black people that's the wrong way to protest. What is the right way for Israel to defend itself? Probably not like doing a genocide. I would take your question more seriously because in abstract, it is a good question. But like Israel has engaged in a 50-year-long policy of ethnic cleansing that has resulted in like mass international denunciation and constant human rights violations that have been tracked and monitored and reported on by basically every organization that cares to do so. So the idea of like, well, how do you want them to defend themselves then? Which is ridiculous. Like there's literally like a million things that they could not do. Anything else, like, you know, short of just nuking Gaza, basically any step they could take in any direction would be better than the ones they're taking today. Like, like seriously, it's like, you in Germany in 1942 with your hands impertinently perched upon your hips. Well, what would you do with a population of people who have failed to integrate and are causing problems during wartime? So you say that the camps they're building are a bad idea, but what would you do? Like it's so like like anything else would be a good idea. Wait, did Jews fail to integrate? I mean, the Nazis would say so. What is integrating? In Nazi Germany, integrating meant becoming a Nazi. Probably a good idea to not then. Update: Israel has started mass arresting its people for social media posts. Dozens of Israelis arrested for social media posts defending Gaza, advocates say. Cool. I love my liberal democracy where you get arrested for social media posts. At least 100 Israelis. Oh, good. There's ambiguity. Have been arrested for social media posts supporting Palestinians in Gaza, and 70 remain in detention, according to a legal advocacy group in the country. Could Ethan be arrested for what he said? If Ethan Klein was in Israel, he would have been arrested. Absolutely, 100%, yes. We're seeing a change in things we didn't see before. Adi Mansour, an attorney in Adalas Civil Rights Unit, said in an interview, there's a change in the perception of what is allowed and what is not allowed. Love my liberal democracy. Love our one democracy in the Middle East where they can block foreign media, arrest you for what you say on social media, and threaten to send you over to the ghettos they're currently bombing. Police arrested Dalal Abu Amneh, a prominent Palestinian Israeli singer, for, quote, incitement after her social media team posted a Palestinian flag with the caption, "There is no victor but God." That's all it takes. Just posting a Palestinian flag. That's all it takes. Mansour said the others were arrested for posts that consisted of Quran verses, prayers for the people of Gaza, and political analysis of Israeli military operations. Because I know for a fact that there were going to be people in here even who would disingenuously be like, you expect Israel to just allow dissidents? When, like, the dissidents here is literally just, like, supporting the people of Gaza. He said judges have rejected requests for house arrest or other forms of release with conditions like prohibitions on internet usage. In all cases, their phones are taken. There is no probability they will sabotage the investigation because there were no witnesses. The only question is the legal one. Is this incitement or not? And despite this, judges are given the green light to extend the arrest. So yeah, they're essentially just blackbagging people. A person was celebrating the engagement of her sister, but because she was posting the picture on the same day of the 7th of October, she is facing a disciplinary process under the argument she is celebrating the death of Jewish Israelis. So essentially, her sister got engaged and she posted on Facebook, "Yay!" And the Israeli police barged down her door and took her away. Yeah, actual 1984. 9/11 dancing Israelis. Oh, you're right. That kind of is like the dancing Israelis conspiracy theory, right? You going into the streets of Israel on the 7th of October and seeing one Jew dancing. Why? Who knows? But it must be because Hamas attacked. Jesus. I mean, the main thing that happened after the things that happened after 9/11 were largely structural. The Department of Homeland Security, TSA, the Patriot Act, all that stuff. And obviously there was like a huge wave of propaganda. But in terms of the immediate crackdown on the protests, my understanding, my memory, and please correct me if I'm wrong, my memory is that like the anti-Iraq war protests, for example, were huge, but they weren't like constant battles in the street. They were mostly just gigantic protests that led to nothing. We invaded Iraq anyway. Also, we didn't start blocking foreign news. I would say that the psychosis that we're going through right now is comparable, but contextualized in the modern era of social media. So, for example, back after 9/11, people weren't arrested for tweeting yay about their sister's engagement, but a bunch of like Arab Americans were blackbagged and sent to Gitmo for perceived association with Al-Qaeda. So there's that. What I would say right now is that what's happening right now in like Germany and France and England is not as bad as what America did to its own people after 9/11, but what's happening in Israel right now has the potential to get worse than what we did to our own people after 9/11. Does that make sense? Maybe I'm totally wrong on that. I don't know. Blackbagging is bad. That's true. On the scale of 9/11 Islamophobia to Japanese internment camps, how would you rate it? Well, you have to keep in mind that people in Gaza are technically under, like, Israel as well, and the way that Israel has treated the Palestinian people is worse than, like, anything America has done to any of its own people since the end of slavery, I think. Yeah, yeah, right? Like, even during the Jim Crow days, the treatment of Black Americans was nothing compared to, like, Gaza being an open-air concentration camp. I don't want to like oppression Olympics or whatever. Obviously, in terms of scale, America's a much larger country. But in terms of like just proportional to the situation, what's happening in Gaza is like insane. Native Americans? Yeah, the natives. When did we stop mass killing them, I guess? Because technically the Native Americans are still in like enclosures, but it's not like Gaza, obviously. They can leave. But, well, they can't leave because they're all poor. So we trap them there with poverty, not with a border fence. But yeah, you know how America likes to do our racial oppression. When they were all dead. What? Guys, I know you're all very woke. I'm very proud of you guys for being woke. Thank you all. You're so woke, and I'm very proud of you. Can we not pretend that Native Americans today are being mass killed the way that Palestinians are? Can we acknowledge that there is an existing oppression without like pretending that the situation in Gaza is comparable to the like? Thank you. And like people in chat saying slavery didn't end until 1960s. Okay, I've seen that video too. Thank you. All right, I've seen the Knowing Better video. It's a great video. We know when slavery ended. Okay, the last genocide of the Native Americans was 1890. Was that Wounded Knee? When was Wounded Knee? Yeah, 1890. Okay, yeah, that was Wounded Knee. Yeah, Wounded Knee was bad. That's my woke take on the subject. Though I guess it is probably worth noting that more people are dying every day in Gaza than the entirety of wounded. Like, just in terms of the scale of human conflict, man. What Israel is doing with Gaza is just so it feels almost incomparable to anything that's happening in the modern world, in like anything even remotely considered the West, you know? It's so on its own. It's remarkable.